Excellent. We're live. And I will try to maintain that illusion for as long as I possibly can. Just anybody that comes on, when somebody, because we're a bit early, ask them what they think. Strange. Oh, the hairdressers are open. Look what I've had done. Oh, look, somebody's actually here now. Stop laughing. People are here. Hello. We're live. I've got horns.
I got a
just especially for tonight. I put my horns on. Only thing is, I can turn my head and the horns don't.
They don't move with you. I know.
What a shame.
It's a shame, isn't it?
Should have used CGI technology.
I'm going to laugh off screen.
Yeah, you can laugh on screen.
I laugh on screen, yeah.
Hello. People are arriving, can't see who they are. Oh, Darren, I can read. Joanne.
Cool, I can't
make out that
tiny.
first
They're
one.
writing so tiny.
Yeah, I can only make them out if I catch them at the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, and I can read those. I can read hearts.
You can read the hearts. There's Sylvia. Look. Hi, Sylvia.
Thumbs. Hello, Sylvia.
Cool.
Yeah. And the name's gone and disappeared. I can't read the ones above it. Oh, it's Darren and Sylvia. It's nice to see so many of you joining us anyway. Cool.
Excellent.
Well, we're inside this week. Last week we were sitting outside, but we were indoors today. So.
Yeah. Another change.
I know.
The weather's definitely, well, I don't know. It's definitely a bit cooler anyway. So, we're giving it a minute, or we're going to
we'll give it a minute.
We'll give them one more minute and then they're late.
That's it.
And then they'll have to catch up.
While we're waiting for everyone, I hope you all had a lovely week. It's been a fabulous week, and I've enjoyed this week.
I've loved the weather the last couple of days. Thunder, lightning, bit of rain. It's been gorgeous.
We've had it all, haven't we? The sun, the rain. It's been lovely.
Oh, I missed the sun. I was working, so I spent all the time sleeping. It was sunny.
That's right. I was sleeping as well. It just does make you sleepy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got people are joining us now, and it has just 1 minute up now. So.
Oh my goodness!
Good
now
evening.
So, hi, I'm Bruce. That's Lynn, even if she's forgotten who she is.
Yeah, I'm Lynn. I'm nothing else. I'm only Lynn.
I expect most people out there know us already.
Yeah, I'm Lynn.
And
that's it. Nothing else.
We're going to talk a little bit about death and dying, and really, you can't talk about death and dying without talking about life and living. Because we're all on this journey. We have a journey. Whatever your beliefs are, whether you have 1 million reincarnations or this is it, this is the only time. We have a journey, and there's a marker at the end of this physical journey, and that's death. So it's the most inevitable thing in your life. You know, more people die than are born. And if you can get your head around that, you realise that death is actually more common than life. But we're all on this journey to this place, and there are people out there, they may have a lot of fears about it and worries about it, but it's the most inevitable thing in your journey. So really, from a start point with living your life is to have the acceptance that this physical journey isn't going to go on forever. There is going to be this point. And I really like what Timothy Leary says about death. He says it's possibly the most important event in your life. You know, and I think brings through to me, and whatever the beliefs are about what happens after this physical journey, whether there's another one or whatever, it's definitely a marker in the journey that we're all on. Okay.
And this is where I believe firmly is where people often hear me say about living and thinking in circles. because there is no beginning, there is no ending, because with death there becomes rebirth, and it's that continuation. It is that circle of life. So we have the death, and we have the rebirth, and that is that circle of life. And yeah, there are a lot of taboos, and it'd be good to talk, because it is a subject very close to Bruce's heart as well, because as Bruce has just said, it is part of life. It is an inevitable part of life, and we're going to look at different ways that we might be able to help us to transform it, not only ourselves, but how we can help others within that transformation as well. Butterflies is one of the things. Butterflies has always been a symbol of death, because it's the rebirth again. It's like the butterfly then is reborn, and it shows its colours, and it's often mentioned, the butterfly. It's a spiritual symbol for life after death. I love that, and I love that because it's like it shows its colours. It's free to fly. It's just I can never say it. Metamorphosis and transformation. Yeah, big words for a Lynn.
Yeah.
Big words. My mouth round. But yeah, from the caterpillar. Yeah, that's that bit.
I like that whole thing with the change and the cycles. If you think about it, all life lives from death. The soil that all the plants grow in, what's that made from? That's made from dead plants, blood, dead flesh, shit, piss, all of that stuff is what makes up the earth that life grows from. So there's life cycles running on a massive scale, as well as on these smaller scales of animals. Some animals only live for a day, other animals 100 years, but like most things lie somewhere in that kind of gauge. But there's all these cycles going, and there's these cycles of thousands of years where things decompose and regrow. I mean, the oldest oak trees, when they die, the nutrients that they put into the soil is exactly what the little acorns need to grow and be healthy.
And it's interesting, a couple of the lyrics in one of my songs is "Look for beauty in decay," and there is such beauty in decay as well. And I love that phrase, "Look for beauty in decay," because a lot of people go, "Ooh, decay," but it's not. There's colour in, there's texture. It's quite a beautiful thing to see. And this time of year as well. I mean, it's not just that we're coming autumnal. It's just that everywhere is so falling. And it's as the leaves are falling, and I've been walking the track.
The sky's grey.
And the sky's grey. Yeah. But what it is that as the leaves start to fall, they show you the nests where birth has taken place. And you can't see that when they're all heavy and they're green. You can hear it, because you can hear all those little chicks in their nests. But that's what I like. And I've sat out the back of my garden this year, obviously with lockdown and everything. And I've watched like maybe a minimum of 2 lots of baby sparrows that have lived and come out of the nest. But there's usually always been at least one dead. There's always one that got kicked out the nest. And that is this cycle. So as the leaves are falling, they're showing us, the leaves are falling and the trees are making way for new growth. But within that, when you get those skeleton trees, I call them the skeleton trees, you can see where all this new life has been so busy. Laying all their eggs and them hatching, and new life has come from that. The first time when I started walking the fields here, and I think this is where we come in such harmony with the land, is because the fields were totally just earth, just mud. Then you see the crops sown, then you watch the crops grow, then you watch them come into their beauty, and then they're harvested, and then the ground is prepared again for the next growth. And that's the same as life. That's the same as life. We're born, we live, we die. Then whatever your belief is. I mean, our Celtic ancestors were so sure of life after death that, You could have a loan. You can have a loan and pay you back in 10 years.
10 lifetimes.
10 lifetimes, rather, not years. 10 lifetimes. That's how sure they were. And that's another bit of a subject that we'll get onto towards the end. But you know, this is this thing. It's this ever moving circle, and I think that's why I like myself. I can't only speak for myself here. Is this turn of the wheel becoming that circle? Like I said, thinking in circles and not straight lines. It's that continuation.
And I love the idea of beauty in decay. I mean, there's like, you go to a sandy beach. Everybody loves a sandy beach, but what's the sand? Like, we've got a local beach, fantastic, called Shell Ness. And if you go there, you really see the transition on the beach of what is full shells, what is part broken shells, and what is fine sand. So without that sort of death of all these shell creatures and the process of the life cycle there, these beautiful sandy beaches really wouldn't exist. So again, you've got this wonderful image of how, like, the death and the transition and that transformation brings such beautiful occurrences.
And what I'd like to touch on here is that we're not saying it's not a sad time when I mean, I've lost my parents, and you know, that loss is something that we all have to deal with. It's something that happens to us all, that we lose people who we love as well. And you know, we're not sitting here saying you're going to laugh your way through it, because it's not. It is an emotional time. You are going to ride the highs, you're going to ride the lows. The waves are going to come and just wash you away. And there are these steps, I believe, these steps of mourning, if you like, that you go through. You go through the shock. Then long before the different phases, I remember driving up my track and really shouting at the top of my voice at my dad for going, you know, how dare you do that when I wasn't here? And I was angry with him for going while I wasn't here. So, but we go through all these different motions, and I think the thing is with us in this country, I know Briz can talk a bit about India, but in this country, it still is a bit of a taboo thing, and death on its own can also be beautiful. You know, because that person who you love that's passed, they're fine, they're okay, they've gone to a place of complete peace, of beauty, whatever it is.
Their pain is
over, it's gone, it's finished. But the pain is the emotional, physical pain that's left with those behind.
With the living.
And you know, and I'm speaking from experience as well here, and I know Bruce is too, because we've both experienced this. And it is, and what you have to learn to do with it is you ride those waves. And there was a piece that I wrote, and I know it's quite apt, and I'm just going to bring it in because we've got a format here, but we're just working as it comes. And I remember when I lost my parents, especially with my dad, because he was the last ones to go, was this having to be the people, because again, it's a taboo subject here. People react to you. I was of mine. She was pregnant and her child was born. The hardest things for her was people would, you know, when they'd say, "Oh, what have you had?" and she'd have to say, "Well, the baby was stillborn," was how then they almost blanked her. They almost run away because they didn't know what to say to her. Their own fears manifested, and I know that somebody's own fears manifested around me because they weren't being helpful to me when my father passed. They were so caught up in their own fear of their father passing that it got to the point I didn't want the person to even look at me, because I knew that this person was looking at me because she was worried more about her own, you know, which again, now I can actually understand that, and that was her fear. But at the time, I could see her, she wasn't really caring about I was going through. It was more that. And I'm just going to read you this, I think, because I think this fits in quite nicely here. And I think it's about being real. And it's always, to me, everything we do is about being truthful. Everything we do is about being truthful. So, you know, if feeling great, you just say you're not feeling great, you're not feeling good. I'll read you this, and as I said, like when we do these sort of things, we'll put them up on the group so you can read them. And this is what I wrote, and I've used this so many times, and I've sent this to other friends and other people who've lost people. And it's called The Realness and the Feelings of the Now. To be void and detached from feelings is to be in the unreal now. The now is embracing all feelings, good and bad, to laugh or to cry, to scream, to shout, to soothe, to cradle, to be alone or to be with others. Far greater is the feelings of love and joy, pain and anger and sorrow, when it's embraced with the realness, because the realness is part of the physical journey. Not to be in the now is to be void of all feelings. It's the disguise of the fearful joker. And a lot of people that I've come across have gone into that. I've seen them go into that phase, that they can't quite get their head around. Is it okay to laugh? Is it okay to be happy? Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's okay to celebrate somebody's life as well as to mourn them. There's both things have their place, but there's no point in us mourning our deaths before they happen, if you like. People were so caught up in like that. The reading, Lynn, it was all very much about being in the present. And in the present, those things can happen. And after my mother passed, there was a long time I thought, well, maybe there's something wrong with me because I haven't had any tears or had this big breakdown or anything. And I think in the moment that surrounded everything, I was so caught up and so busy in sorting things out that it was like there wasn't time for that. It was all on the back burner, if you like. And then it came later where there's the sudden realisation of sort of like, oh, I miss having a hug with her. I miss things. But it's very much about me living my life and those emotions. For her, now I only realised after she passed just how much pain that my mother had lived with, because there wasn't a place in a whole flat where you could be further than an arm's reach away from some seriously heavy pain-killing medication, because she got stuck in places. So wherever she got stuck, she needed to be able to know that she could get to the medicine. But from my point of view, suddenly it was like, wow, she's really actually... There is nowhere where you're more than an arm's reach away from this, and realise just how much pain she was in. So when I look at the experience of death for her, I see that she has that pain's all gone now. And that really doesn't make any difference to any knowledge you may have about or any beliefs that you have to what happens after you die. The very facts are that she was in pain in this physical journey, and that pain is now over for her. So when I start to look at it from that angle and that perspective, I start to see my mourning is kind of, it's much more reduced and much lessened by the fact that I know that she is now comfortable. That pain has ended. And I think that's a strange thing, because most of us enjoy our lives or think we're enjoying our lives, and there are people enjoying their lives, and for them it's not such a sad thing. It's something that they're embracing as well, But even if you embrace everything with a joy and you're happy with your life and you don't, so everything's perfect in your life, there's still this inevitability. But we're not going to spend our time worrying about it, because it's going to happen. So we get back to that. It's from a living perspective, it's much more important to live and to celebrate. And we can always remember these people. but we can remember the joy, because the death period is a very short amount of space and time in somebody's whole life. So we don't want to get caught up on just focusing on that moment, you know. That doesn't take away the sadness, as people will be knowing, you know.
And you know, where I'd like to come in on this as well is that because it's something that we don't deal with a great deal, a lot of people don't know, and I want to touch on this, don't know how much you can do for. And when it happens, like you're in this state of flux, you're in this state of shock, aren't you? It's a, you know, you're trying to do this, that, and the other, and a lot of people don't know. Well, past, I wanted to do something special for her. I didn't want the ordinary things, and nothing I do is normal. Put it that way. Well, my dad was like me. He didn't want it normal, and we did our own service, and it was just beautiful. And then when my dad passed, he left a tape recorder of what he wanted. About 15 songs, wasn't it? That was the songs I wanted, by the way. Left a whole recording of what he wanted. But I always remember after my dad's ceremony, and I call them ceremony, I said celebration of life, and you put that energy and that effort into making that a celebration, and a celebration of their life by honouring that person, doing what that person would have liked. It was so important for us to do that, and to do that for my dad. And I remember a friend of mine that I used to work with said to me, if only I'd known that you didn't have to have the curtains pulled. Worst part for me when my son died. She said, having to see those curtains drawn. She said, I didn't know you didn't have to do that. So there's a lot of people don't know these things, that you don't have to have a 45-minute slot. I went into the undertakers and I said, I want 3 hours. The guy looked at me like I was stupid. I said, no, I'm booking at the crematorium for 3 hours. I said, you know, my dad's given me this big list of what he wants. We won't do that in 45 minutes, you know. And we did this celebration, and it was sad, but it was beautiful because we did it how he wanted. And I don't think there's enough knowledge out there that you don't have to tell you. You know, I didn't want them to wear black ties. I bought them all yellow. I didn't want people rocking up in black. My dad wouldn't have liked that. Neither would my mum. So we you know, we had multicolours, and I think there's a lot more opening to this now of more natural, and you know, I think there's a lot of information out there. So just, you know, I always say, like, you know, what is it you look for? Not forearmed is forewarned, but you know, have that knowledge, have that understanding. Coming slightly back into the living as well, I felt very, very privileged when a few years ago, I mean, it's old now, I worked with elderly care, and I loved work. And one of the greatest things and the gifts for me, I believe, quite a few times when someone passed, and I actually felt a bit robbed that I weren't there for my parents, because in my mind I wanted to do that for my parents, but they obviously didn't want me to do that. They didn't want it for their daughter. It wasn't what I wanted. I wanted it. They didn't want that for me. But being in that space to be able to help people, you know, whether you're just holding a hand, and watching that transition from the life, there was something very special, very intimate, very I can't find quite words to describe this beauty from that last breath, when that last breath left that body. And I stood there for quite a few of those when I was there, and I felt very honoured and very privileged to do that. And it was quite beautiful. And this is where I want to come to the living again, because it's, and they hold them back through love and ignorance. And it's not done in any out of any malice or anything like that, but working on wards and working within, especially on the line of work that I was doing, it was an occurrence. It was almost a daily occurrence. But I sit with someone for days, absolute days, nights and days. Suddenly they said, I'm just going to have to go home, get a change of clothes and have a shower. Yeah, that's fine, you know, you go. And I can tell you, they've not even got out of the hospital when their loved one has passed over. Because that love can hold them back. And I had this great teacher, Ed McGaw, his name, Eagle Man. And it was something that he said years ago to me, and it stayed with me. And he said about how he was very close to his uncle, and he got this call to say his uncle was passing over, he was dying. And he went out and he did his ceremony and he did his prayers, and then he got the plane, and all the time he was on the plane he was sending out prayers for his uncle. His uncle was like his father, who, you know, thought the world of this man. When he got to his uncle's bed, uncle looked at him and said, "How dare you? How dare you hold me back and send me healing? I was ready." I just wanted to leave that with you, because I think that's something to really think about.
Yeah, there is this thing where also people that are dying are looking for the permission to go, if you like. Now, when my father died, I was in India, and I was trying to get back because he was very ill in hospital, and it became obvious that I wasn't going to be back for over a week, and I knew that he was suffering in hospital. So I phoned up and asked to speak to him, and was told pretty conclusively, well, he's in a coma, he's not going to speak to you. I said, yeah, but he's going to hear me. And obviously I'm a trained nurse as well, so I've had these experiences, as Lynn was talking about. But when people are in a coma, often the hearing is it's the last sense to leave and the first sense to go back. So the chances are that these people are going to hear you. So I just asked for the phone to be put to my father's ear, and I could hear him while I was talking, and I could hear the breathing as I was talking. So I have no doubt that he heard what I said. And I just told him that it was going to take me a long time to get there. He shouldn't wait for me. He should just be comfortable and go. And then I was phoned back within half an hour that he'd passed. Absolutely no, that he was waiting for me. But when he heard me telling him that, like, you know, that I was there and not to hang around for me, that kind of gave him the permission to go. So that works in on both ways as well. The people that are passing are kind of looking for the permission and the right time to go. So there is a play there, but it's very easy for people. Lynn often uses the idea of Nelson Mandela. He was so ill for so long, but he had almost a whole world full of people trying to keep him back, you know, and it was only after everything sort of died out in the media and there weren't so many people focusing on holding him back that he eventually passed. So there's definitely some play there on the energetic levels. I think it'd be really nice to talk about Buzzard's Call at this point.
Yeah, I think it you know, quite often here, if anyone passes, there's a very she's a friend of ours and a musician, beautiful musician, Caroline Hillier, and there's one of her songs. There's a little extract from one of her songs, and quite often if someone's passed over, they'll ask if I would sing that, or relatives will ask if I'll sing it. I've been asked by Spirit before as well. And we sing it over, but there's other songs that you can sing over. And there was the Bones singer that would sing over the bones of the dead. That's one of my songs. And there was a chant that came with that was gifted to us at a burial place in Ireland. And to sing the soul over is beautiful. And, you know, you can drum in a baby into the world, and you can also drum somebody else. And I've got a few friends that I've spoken to that have actually helped a loved one pass with a gentle drumming. Like they've drummed a baby coming into the world, they've helped with someone going out of the world too. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. When you sing to the spirits, and we have we work very closely. Heron works very closely with us here. She's one of my and she's been with me ever since I moved in here, and that would be, I'm not sure, it's 18 years this year, maybe 17, it could be 19, but it's round about there anyway. But it was only a little while. I haven't been in here very long at all, maybe a week, 2 weeks. And there's a little straight bit as you come down our track. You run along my neighbour's fence, and then you come up to a straight bit between the barn and the fence. And as I drove round the corner, there was this heron standing there, and the heron just I stopped in the car, and it just looked at me, and we sat like that for maybe 5 minutes, maybe a good 5 minutes. It just took off over the car, flew across me. And I was like totally gobsmacked, because I've never seen one so close up. And what are you saying? What was the message, Heron? What were you saying to me? What was that? And then the next morning I got the song called Heron, and I don't know if you've heard it. It's one of our top. And it's about the heron, and the heron was sent to take the souls of the birds away. Because then I found that a couple of days later that I moved into a shooting range, and my husband came in and he says, "Don't go out for a while," he said, "because it's literally raining ducks out there." This massive shoot, and there was ducks and birds just falling out of the air. And then I realised that the heron now, and we call to the heron, if there's a shoot, it's bad now, because I get on very well with my we work together now. You know, he knows how I am, and I respect him, and he respects us, so they don't shoot near us now. But I knew then that the heron was there. And then there was the song that I wrote. I'd gone to see an aunt of mine, my Auntie Frances. She was passing over, and we were on our way to a festival. And when I got to the festival, after I'd seen my aunt, I looked up, and there was the buzzard, and then there was the skylark, and then that's where the song Skylark came from. And that song has been used in many ceremonies. And it was one of the first times I ever met Mummy Ann. I called Bruce's mum Mummy Ann, because she was like another mum to me. We got on so well. And I remember the first thing she said to me, she was at one of our concerts, and she said, "I want that song at my funeral." So that was exactly what she did. So there are things that you can do. And I know a lot of people work in hospice, and they're an amazing, amazing team of people. We had a very dear friend of ours in one not long ago, and their care and the attention, just to the simple fact of one of the nurses went and made him, it was bread and butter pudding, I think it was, that he'd fancied, and they didn't have one. It's all this, the kindness that people can show. And that's all you can do. And it's just that, be there, be that kindness, have that love, have that unconditional love when it's someone of yours as well, because this is where the unconditional love comes in. You've got to love them unconditionally, that if they want to cross over and they're making that journey, you allow them. And a very, very dear friend of mine, this is going back a long, 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 long time ago, was incredibly ill in intensive care. She was giving up. And everybody was like trying to send out these back, and I just whispered in her ear, "If you want to go, I'll still love you. Whatever you choose, I'll love you, whether you go or whether you stay." And she made a transition that night for the better. But I really felt that was because she had that choice. She was given that choice, because people still want to have choice and have control.
I think we all do, but only when we realise that we do. And when we know it, when we really know it, not believe it, you've got to really know it. Now, when my mother died, she spent 2 days, and she spent 2 days phoning all her friends. And like, she phoned me up, I was in India, she phoned me up just to have a chat. She was like, "Oh, well, I'm in hospital, there's no point in you coming back. If you're here, I'm not going to see you anyway. You know, visiting times, all the rest of it." Anyway, basically just put me at ease, and mentioned that she was phoning round all her friends and everything. And then at the end of the second day, she had a friend who was there visiting, and she said, "Oh, you better go now, I'm going to go to sleep and die." And that's all she said to her. So she went home, and my mum went to sleep and died. exactly as she said she was going to. You know, and I think that we all have that amount of control. But most of us, because we don't really believe it, or it is only a belief, you know, a belief is topperable. You know, it's only when we have knowledge that it becomes unshakable. But when you have a belief and then you get a confirmation of your belief, that's where knowledge comes from. That's that goes beyond belief. It becomes something. Doesn't matter how many times people will tell you the sky is pink, you know it's blue, unless it's pink. And they're telling you it's blue. But like, once we really have the knowledge, then we really understand. And I really believe, I know my mother made that choice. That was the time for her. She'd already decided years before she was going to die peacefully in her sleep, because she didn't like all the other options. So for her to actually say to a friend, like, you go because this is what's going to happen, you know, she stated it with that intention. She was firm in her intention. It's what happened. And I think for me personally, there was a great lesson in there as well. The fact that right down to that very last breath, she still had the choice of when she was going to take it. You know, and most people are confused through life, so why wouldn't they be confused at the point of death? And Lynn touched on looking after the elderly and looking after people at their end of transition. And I'm a trained nurse. When I started, it was like 26 weeks or whatever of looking after people at their end of lives. There's so many people within their last days, they would talk about all the things they regretted or all the things that they hadn't done when they were living their life, all those compromises that had stopped them doing what they really wanted to do in their heart. And this really, this had a big effect on me for living, because I didn't want to be one of those people that sat there and had all those regrets at the end. At the beginning, it's really hard to talk about dying. The concept of death can have such a profound effect on our lives, but we've got to keep living to be just one of those. And as we said before, it's the most inevitable. So you know, it's the way we interact with it, especially in the West here, is very shielded and like removed. People don't like to look at it. Yeah, it's really removed. Now, when I was a child, my nan was in the same house that we lived in when she died, but I hadn't seen her for weeks before she died, and certainly didn't see her after she was dead, because I mean, personally, and I'm sure my mother, when she looked back at it, probably thought it wasn't such a good idea as she had imagined in the first place. It was done out of the purest intention to protect the child from something that my parents saw as being really scary, but it was their fears projecting on the child. And so a lot of people out there that do have either a fear of death and dying, or a worry about when somebody else dies, and all these things surrounding death, more often than not, I think it was nurtured into us. Because when you look at different cultures where death is very much a part of life. Now, as Lynn said, I would talk about India. So to me, Varanasi is the place of death. That makes it sound really horrendous. It's a beautiful city. But all the time, fires are burning. And it's not like in England, where, as like this was saying to you, Lynn, when you go to a funeral parlour and the curtains are drawn and it's all hidden in. It's not like that in India. You know, like somebody's placed like in a cloth. Yeah, they're bound in a cloth, but they're put on a big stack of wood and this is burnt, and you know, like you watch your relative burning, there is no doubt by the end of it that their physical existence is over. But it's so much a part of life, and yeah, there's a lot of grieving at that moment because people are sorry, they're missing their relative, their loved ones there, and but it's such a big part of their life that I think that they cope with it a lot better due to the fact that it's in front of your eyes. There's no doubt what happened. You know, in our Western world, I mean, the last time I saw my mother, for instance, she was in a coffin. Did they really burn her? I don't know. They gave me a box with some ash in. Was it hers? You know, it wasn't right in front of me. You know, so it's kind of, and that's just a little thing, but that's an echo of the way our Western society doesn't want to look at it. You know, somebody at some point went to great pains in making this whole thing hidden so that they didn't have to look at it.
And I kind of there, Bruce, as well, because I remember I was very, very close to my grandfather. Not so much to my nan, but very, very close to my grandfather. And I remember the last day he spoke to me was he said, "Oh, look after Nanny for me," and he went off to hospital, and I never see him again. And I remember coming in, I was only quite young, and my mum was standing at the window crying, and I was sent next door. All she said to me was, "Your granddad's dead," and she sent me next door to the neighbour. And I was completely excluded from it all. It was like, you know, all I just never see my granddad again. And I wasn't told I couldn't go to dinner or anything like that, because my mum and dad thought they were doing what was best for me. They were shielding their daughter, but they actually traumatised me. You know, and it's so easy to get caught up, actually, you know, within all of these things, because Bruce and I, we were caught out a little bit. A few years ago, we went to some friends of ours, and again, you see, just in Ireland, they do things very, very differently to even here. And we thought we were being respectful by giving them space because they lost somebody very, very close to them. But really, they wondered where the hell we were because they wanted us to play music.
Every day,
they were all there. You know, and this is just how different cultures and different people, you know, how they handle this situation. And there's no right way, there's no wrong way, you know, it's whatever works for you. What we're trying to do here is explain there are different things that you can do. Like, you can be in control, you can take control of your own funeral. Yes. At the moment, I'm sorting out where I want to go, and I had a right laugh with a woman on the phone the other day because she said, "Oh, so-and-so who you need to speak to isn't here at the moment." I said, "Oh, okay." She said, "She'll be in on Monday." I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll ring Monday and she can fill me in." Then I realised what I said. So you know, we had a laugh over it. And getting back to that, you know, if anyone has any questions, you know, afterwards, please email us because we'll be very happy to answer any of your questions. Because it does help with the mourning stage as well when you actually start creating these ceremonies yourself for your own loved ones. And you can do it in such a beautiful way. You don't have to follow, you know, when we tend to be led by our noses sometimes in this country because we think we have to do it a specific way. You don't. You do it your way. Yeah. You do it your way, how you want it done for your loved ones. And if we can be of any help with you with that, please do. And I know that we've helped a few people along with different things that they didn't understand, that you didn't have to have the curtains pulled. Such a simple thing like that, you know. And then, you know, if you want wailers, have wailers, because the trouble is a lot of people get so bunged up with grief is because they can't let it out.
Yeah.
You know, let it out.
That's a great idea to have wailers.
You know.
I wonder if my mum would have liked that.
Oh, I bet she would. Should have been wailing.
I must say, one of the biggest things that I found was when I was organising. Now, like most places that will organise these funerals and everything else, they'll offer you their priest or their non-denomination talk or whatever. And that's fine. You can have anybody. Like when I went, I didn't want somebody that didn't really know my mother to talk about my mother. And yeah, it was hard, but I ran the ceremony myself. So there's so many options in there from doing it yourself or doing it with family members or getting the right person to speak and hold the ceremony. Don't fall into the idea of the package. We have this sort of pre-packaged life option, and they also have the pre-packaged when you're dead option, but doesn't mean to say that has to be your choice when you're doing it. So everything can be much more personalised, and nowadays everything's a lot more open as well. There's so many more venues that are opening for funerals. There's all the natural woodlands, and there's so many more options.
I've already told my lot that if they go and pay out for those big black cars, I'll go mad. I'm only short, just put me in the back of the car. Don't hire out. Why would I want my loved ones sitting in a black car that is full of negativity and other people's sorrow? I wouldn't like that. No way. I wouldn't want that for them. No way. And anyway, and the money they save, they have a bloody great party or a family holiday with, because that's another thing. That it's a very big money-making thing as well. But, you can do it as beautifully and as reverently as you can. If you can hold the ceremony yourself, fine. Bruce did his own. I couldn't. I was too emotional. I've got a very dear friend of mine, held my dad's. But there are lots of things. But I want to get back to the living as well, because I think that's a very, very important thing here. And Bruce touched on it a little earlier. Many years ago, I actually faced my own immortality. I was healthy. I hadn't had my life. One bang. And then I had nearly maybe 2.5, 3 years of major surgery. And, I thought I was crossing over a couple of times in amongst all that. And people say to me, oh, you don't stop, you're always busy. Yeah, I am. Because it's only when you've had a real close call, you realise that you don't want to get to your deathbed and say, if only. Yeah. If only I'd done this. If only I'd done that. If I want to do something, those that know me, I think it, I've done it. I do it within it comes to fruition. Because if I have an idea, I do it. If I want to do something, I do it. Come hell or high water, I'll do it. And I think that's because when you have a close call like that, you realise the fragility of life as well, because it can be snuffed out in a second. And I've seen this, and I know Bruce has seen this. When you work in where we work, it can just change in the matter of a minute. And it's very, very important to enjoy life and not feel you'll ride all of these different emotions, and they're all fine. They're all good emotions. It's okay to be happy, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be all of these things. But ultimately, enjoy life. Enjoy life as much as you can. And don't get to that point where you're sitting there going, if only. If only. My mum and dad always used to say to us, never go to bed on an argument. Never like to go to bed on an argument. It was kiss, make up. Don't hold grudges, that's another thing. Because, it can be too late. And you can't undo the clock. And another thing I want to say as well is that I was also, when I was working, I felt very, very privileged to be able to, lay somebody out. And there was nothing scary about that. I always felt it's such a great honour to be able to do that last act for somebody, and do it with such reverence and such care and such beauty. And the first thing I needed to do with both my parents, because I was in America both times when I lost my parents. I mean, mum and dad with bad health, but it was not foreseen. If it had been foreseen, I wouldn't have gone. But then I think I wasn't meant to be around. They didn't want their daughter around, because I wanted to lay my mum and dad out. I wanted to do for them what I'd done for people I didn't know as well. But I realised now that my mum and dad didn't want that for their daughter. Would I want that for my children? No, of course I wouldn't. It was what I wanted, and this is what we get a bit caught up with sometimes. We have to get out of what we want, I want, and it's what's best for them. But there was everyone that I see. There was this peace. There was this. It's hard to say, but the spirit has left the body. You just know the spirit has left the body.
You can see the change. You can see the moment.
It's tangible, isn't it? It is so tangible. there was a time they used to always open the windows. You know, I don't even know if they still do that now, but irregardless of that. But I do know that as far as my parents were concerned and patients that I nursed, I felt very honoured to nurse those patients, but also at the end of that, there was something very surreal, something that's very serene in that room and in that energy and in their bodies. There was just this physical shell, but there was this peace, this beauty. That's all I can say. It was a and I had to make that's the first thing I wanted to do with my parents, was I needed to make sure and see that their spirits had left their body. And there was nothing hanging around. But I do sometimes think if there's a bit of a shock like that, they can hang around a little bit. Maybe to ones, because you know, it's a whole nother subject whether or not you believe in life after death. That's entirely a whole nother subject. I do, and especially from my years of nursing, because I remember going into a handover and we'd be sitting there and someone that didn't have any idea or any beliefs at all would say, oh, Aunt Flo's seen her great grandmother, she's been talking to her all day. Next thing I know is that person's going to pass that night, and they sure do, because Aunt Flo had come to help her over and ease her over. And we always ask, if we know that someone's passing, we always ask that their journey be one of grace and ease. And when we do healing here, people ask us to send out healing. We only send out healing to those that we know have asked for it, because there's no way I want to hold somebody back. I'll send them love, send them positivity, and ask for what's best for them. But I certainly wouldn't send anything to hold them back. I'd let them go with my love. As hard in some cases as that could be. And I had to do that with my dad.
There's a lot of things that you can do spiritually, help people on their journey without sending the healing. You know, we're all healers, and everybody wants to heal everything and everybody and heal the planet and everything else. But when we look at it realistically, you have to be careful what you choose to send your healing energies towards. Mm-hmm. Because some things, not having the positive effect that you're trying to achieve. Let's put it like that. Even fantastically positive healing can be negative in some perspectives.
You know, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be really interested in this topic that we've chosen to talk about tonight, and there's going to be a lot of people that are not. And there's going to be people that mostly tuned in and ended up switching off because they thought, oh, they're not ready to deal with that, and that's fine. Absolutely fine. Because we're not sitting here saying it's easy, because we're not saying it's easy. No. It's not easy at all.
But it is part of life, and it is something that no matter how much you want to run away from it, it's inevitably going to have some effect on your life. You know, even if you manage to avoid caring for anybody who dies ever, apart from the day you die for yourself, and maybe you don't care about that either, but it's still going to happen.
I wish we could read there is so many comments coming up.
Long as well, and other ones are just like a really nice heart. Thank you.
We will read them. You know, we will read them. So thank you for taking the time to type them out. We just can't see them because they're like really diddy.
Yeah. We have a look at them afterwards, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And it's as I say, it's like look for that beauty in decay. It's quite beautiful. And when in all of decay, I mean, I've got red apples and decaying apples out there, and that's a bit like life. You know, you put a young baby right next to somebody that's older. I was looking at my grandson's little hands. He was showing me his drawings, and his skin's like velvet. And that's another phrase actually in that song. It's skins of velvet we are born, journey as the wheel does turn. You know, because it is something that happens to us all. We all age, but there again, not all of us reach maturity. Not all of us even reach birth.
Yeah,
you know,
some people are dead before they're born.
Yeah, and you know, this is how it all. That's what living is, and that's what living's about. It sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? But it is. It's what living's about. And I also know people they waste their whole life with their fear of being dead or dying, and that is a real shame. You know, live and dance in the rain and dance in the sun, and you know, and you always have you have control as well. And if you do want any advice, I mean, we don't know it all, but you know, there's a few things we can help you with as far as celebrations go. We can help with that. And if this has brought something up that doesn't sit comfortable with you and you want to have further conversation with us, you can message us privately. We're both on Facebook Messenger. My email is on it's on the group anyway, I believe.
My email's there as well.
Our emails are there. You know, just talk to us. We're there. We'll follow up. We're not just going to do this turn off and say thank you, good night, goodbye. Because I know that this is a subject that is quite raw and isn't easily talked about at all.
Yeah.
But I do think it is important, especially with younger children, not to shut them out, to bring them into the fold, and you know, they know a lot more than you think they do. I know as a child I was traumatised by being excluded from when my grandpa passed, and that left a really bad scar deep for me.
Well, I think also it's perhaps the most apt moment to celebrate anybody's life. Let's look at it in that respect, because you know, it's we choose the perspective we look at, and we can look at it from the "oh, poor me" perspective, or we can look at it "oh, how fantastic for you" perspective as well. So I think we really need to, as humans, to encompass death quite rightfully as the massive part of life that it is. It should be a joyful thing.
It can also be quite fun.
Yeah, of course. I'm looking forward to being dead.
We put a large...
I can have a rest.
Yeah, you're like me, I know you will. I tell you what, anyone
I'm
does
not
my
wasting
service...
my time haunting anybody, I'm just going to have a rest.
I will. If anyone takes my service and calls me hun, love, sweetheart, sweetie, anything other than Lynn. But no, I'll track what I was going to say then. But it's, yeah, no, I've lost my track now, but... you just carry on talking and we'll come back.
I've got 50-50 chance, I always figure, of dying in India or in England. But in India, they already know. Take me to the cheap crematorium and just stick me in for a tenner. Don't waste any money and enjoy the money doing whatever else. And if I die in England, I think I want to speak at my own service. I'll leave a recording. Because that just seems like it would just be so much fun. Yeah. To start by going woo.
that takes me back. Actually, there was, I don't know if anybody see it, but there was a clip going around on Facebook. I think it was last year sometime. There was these mourners all around a graveside, and I think it was an Irish funeral, and they were by the graveside, and suddenly this voice goes, "Hey, get me out of here," or something like that. It was so funny anyway. And all these mourners, apparently it was like a stage joke on the part of the deceased, frighten the life out of the living. But you know, obviously there was quite a bit of humour there.
Left a recording to put in there.
But ultimately, you know, it is everything comes, everything goes. Everything comes, everything goes. It's that cycle of life. We live that cycle of life. We even more so, I feel this time with lockdown and with the shutdown and everything else. I've walked this track 2 to 3 times a day, and I've really seen the whole cycle all the way through. Now we've got the hawthorn berries, and I remember the tree when it was just the skeleton, and then you start seeing these little tiny buds start to grow, and that cycle of life and rebirth is quite amazing. And I just want to say another thing here as well. Death doesn't necessarily always mean the physical death. Death is change of change. Now, if we have a couple for a handfast, it's usually the only time I'll have a couple actually in lodge together, and they'll come and take a sweat lodge together, and I'll sit them in the north. And in some cultures, that would be really bad. That would be, oh, you can't sit in the north. That's the death door. Because it's the north door. And the north door is the place of death. It's the death. But what's next to north is east, is rebirth. So we usually sit them in the north because their role is changing. They're changing from two people to become a couple, to become one. So their whole role is changing. That's why they'll be sitting in the north, and then they'll come out of the east door because they're coming out reborn. So it's not, and I do believe, I'm not very great with tarot. I have touched on tarot as well. But there's the death card in tarot. And people, is it the Hanged Man, isn't it? I believe.
Well, it's in all cultures.
It's in all
cultures. There is a death card.
Yeah.
But it is a change and
but it's
rebirth.
A change. It could be the start of a new job. It could be the end of an old job and the start of a new job. And change is always difficult to embrace. If you say so, I say. If you say so. But if move forward with it with grace and ease and just allow it flow with that, then it all becomes a calmer water and still a space. Does that make sense?
Possibly.
I hope so.
Possibly. But yeah, there is, and in many cultures there's the same thing. Shiva, the god of destruction, not really destruction, which is death, but transformation, So everything is constantly in that flux. Anyway, I don't know. We've been talking for too long, or not long enough.
If you want to go further in this conversation, let us know, and maybe we'll do another night and continue. And maybe you can put some questions up for us that we could. You give us questions in advance, and then we can come and maybe, if we can, answer them. We'd be very truthful if we can't answer them, and just bear in mind we haven't got all the answers. What we tried to do tonight is bring a taboo subject out into the open to speak about our experiences and share our experiences with you to maybe help you, because that's how we grow, that's how we learn, is by going through these experiences in each other. And it's I've been really on the thing on the island. There's nothing on the island. Islanders here have to go off the island to get a
Not now, there is one.
Well, there is one now, but it's not even got any toilets.
You don't need a toilet when you're dead. Don't worry about the living.
Don't worry about the living. But we're actually getting one now, so that's really great. So but it's just to help with some of the practicalities as well, and hope we shared that with you with respect. We have to laugh at all these things, but also with respect, and that, I think that's the main thing, is with truth, honesty, and respect at all times, and and that's what we've tried to bring to you here tonight. So I hope it's helped you a little bit. As we said, please message us if you would like, and if you any suggestions. If you do want to continue this conversation with questions and answers, let us know, and we'll sort something out. Our next live stream is going to be, actually it's myself, next Saturday. I'm doing something Saturday afternoon, the 22nd of August. It's a women's thing. We're going to be looking at another night to bring into you, play at some point in September. So until then, thank you so much for joining. Keep well, be happy, make each day count.
And for all those that have passed, all those souls, loved ones, family members, those of your bloodline, those that have touched your heart, those that didn't manage to be born, for all of those souls past, may they be remembered.
May they all be remembered.